Drop it. Power panel. I almost went too irreverent on the drop it, so I reeled it back in. So Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, of course, the host of the Bituation Room, that is a podcast on the TYT network. And of course, John is the host of Damage Report. All right, we got wild and woolly show for you guys. At some point, I might agree with an alt-right character. With Matt Gaetz a little bit. Okay, all right, so, and I might give Israel credit. What is going on tonight's show? Well, let's find out, John.
We're in the bizarro world.
It's woolly.
But anyway, I hope it's not the alt-right thing I'm thinking. I'm gonna be watching the second hour now, just dreading when you finally reveal that. But before we get to that cause for dread, we have a different cause for dread, so let's launch into this first topic. Late last night, the conflict between Israel and Iran continued into its newest phase, with Israeli aircraft launching at least 3 missiles at the city of Isfahan, which is home to nuclear facilities as well as an air base. Now, in addition to the missiles that were fired, Israeli officials have talked about using explosive drones in the attack, which they have used in similar sorts of attacks in the past. Now, the good news coming out of this is that despite the fact that they were just attacked and in their territory, Iran appears to be making all of the sorts of moves and making all of the sorts of statements that you would make if that was probably going to be it for now, which is certainly good news if you want to avoid World War III. And at this point, we don't know much about the damage that was done by these missiles or by the drones. The Iranian state-run news agency said earlier today that its reporters hadn't seen any large-scale damage or explosions anywhere in the country, and that no incidents were reported at Iran's nuclear facilities. Flight restrictions imposed overnight by Iran were lifted in the morning, and that could very well be true. Of course, it is state-run media, so not necessarily the case, but it seems consistent with what others are saying. And interestingly, in the immediate aftermath of the strike, Iranian media and officials described a small number of explosions. They described it internally as an attack by infiltrators rather than by Israel, and that obviated the need for retaliation, which is interesting. One lawmaker called the strike ridiculous, saying it showed that Israel is, quote, content with these ineffective actions, and a former foreign minister referred to them as fireworks.
Ooh, now, buddy.
Fireworks. So you could say that's bluster, but if it's bluster, that's like, hey everyone, this was irrelevant. Let's not strike back and continue this through a couple more rounds. Then I think most people will consider that to be a win. We have more on this, more communications and more potential consequences, but Cenk, I wanted to go to you for reactions. I know that you produced a live video right as it was happening, but now with more info, what do you think?
Yeah, so that's the fog of war. What happens in the first couple of hours, first 24 hours is not, you've got to take it with a grain of salt. So last night I was livid about the idea of Israeli strikes on Iran because they had promised, theoretically, they had promised Biden behind the scenes that they wouldn't do it. Apparently, maybe Biden might have exchanged no strikes against Iran for a horrible humanitarian catastrophe invasion of Rafah. And so we'll see if that is actually true and that invasion, that assault on Rafah is imminent. But now that we've seen how it's gone back and forth, I'm thrilled to report to you guys that I think the disaster has been averted and that Israel might have actually done the right thing here. And so any strike is wrong to begin with. So I'm not giving them full credit. I would have preferred no strike at all for sure, because any strike risks further retaliation and then and getting us into a cycle of violence, which leads to a disastrous war. But if you were going to do a strike, this is how I would have wanted it, which is a relatively light strike, not on a nuclear facility, but in Isfahan to make sure the Iranians know that we could strike your nuclear facilities if we wanted to. Look at how close we came to them. It appears no one hurt, that's critical. So Israel knows how to do a devastating strike. This is not a devastating strike. And so then Iran's reaction is also very important. Do they take it as that's it, we're going to war? Because they had said before any strike is going to be met with maximum force, right? And now them dismissing it as fireworks is terrific news. And saying that it's infiltrators is terrific news. Because you want them to be able to say to their domestic audience, it wasn't really Israel, don't sweat it. And so, because we don't want Iran to retaliate and get into a further cycle of violence, more indications that it was a light tap. Israel not taking credit for it, because if they take credit for it, then it embarrasses Iran and they're gonna have to be forced into retaliating. But America's saying, yes, it was Israel. So that's their way of saying, don't worry, Israel did it. They struck back, good enough, right? Without Israel claiming it. So Iran can say, well, maybe it wasn't Israel. That's the military diplomacy here. Like when you're using bombs as diplomacy, which is a very, very bizarre situation. Doesn't happen very often, but it has in the last two strikes, the one from Iran and the one from Israel. This is kind of how you wanted to go. If you said to me they're gonna do a strike, how do you want to draw it up? I would have drawn it up exactly like this to avoid war. So that's my honest take on it. I'm curious what you guys think. Francesca, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just like the idea that Iran could retaliate for this and then actually use firecrackers and there'd just be like those bang snaps, and then pretty soon everyone's just like pew, pew, and then, yay, crisis averted, just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That's just my cartoon brain working there. But what I actually think, two things. I think this tells us something about the power of Joe Biden. And beyond Joe Biden, the power of the American presidency. The fact that Joe Biden, this was the first time that he basically said to Israel, no, in 6 months, we're not going to join you in any kind of offensive. And look what Israel did. Instead of doing a retaliating in a massive way, they did some bang snaps. They did this, right? And so again, Biden has been saying for 6 months that he doesn't have any control. What are you gonna do? I don't know. And I'm mad, ooh, mad. But then when push comes to shove and they say, we're not gonna go with you on this, Israel retaliates like that. So you could give him credit. You could also say by the same token, if someone else were in the White House who was all as much as Zionist as Biden is, and then itching for a World War III, a John Bolton, Senator John Kennedy, where would that leave us now? And then finally, we really do have to remember that the ongoing genocide in Gaza is exactly that, ongoing. And this was always, as it was meant to be, a distraction from Netanyahu's crimes.
Yeah, really fast. You referenced there that there are obviously some political figures like John Bolton here domestically that every time one of these things are done that seems designed to stop the conflict, they get incredibly mad. Well, there are those forces certainly in Iran and Israel as well who are considering these to be inadequate. And I also, I want to clarify something. I think I might have misstated. I'm not even sure that I did. Honestly, I have dad brain. I believe I said that Israeli officials said that explosive drones had been used. It was Iranian officials as part of, I believe, the cover story. I don't know that I even got that wrong, but just in case, I don't want to spread misinformation. And what I'm about to say is probably pedantic, it's probably irrelevant, but as we've talked about, I think Francesca, you and I talked about on TDR this morning, anytime you say this started with X, that's probably propaganda because these conflicts go back so far. But I think it's safe to say that at least this round of the conflict began with the strike on the embassy in Syria. And oh, by the way, Syria was also struck at the same time, basically simultaneously as with Iran being struck. And so the strike happened and Iran felt compelled to respond, but they responded similar to, in this case, in a way that seemed designed to not do much damage at all. And at least as far as I've seen, no Israeli died in that attack. And that could have been the end of it. It seemed designed to be the end of it, but it couldn't be the end of it because despite the fact that this round began with Israeli action that Iran responded to, they had to respond, once again putting the ball in the court of the Iranians, and thankfully, and perhaps predictably, the Iranians did not want to go into a full war that could have drawn in the United States. So they did, they don't appear to be responding. And of course that could change, but right now that's what it looks like. And I just have to wonder, why did we have to have this last action? Why does, and maybe it doesn't matter, but why do we have to come out of this thinking that, Iran was the bigger person in this. They are the one who's willing to be hit and not respond. Like Israel could have done that. They could have been the responsible player. And look, they were responsible to some extent in that they seem to have designed this attack to once again allow the thing to fizzle out. And maybe it's pointless 6 months from now, I doubt we'll even remember, but they could have just ended it. Again, they started this most recent round. And so, I don't know, maybe they felt emboldened by the fact that they have the bigger alliance. They have the United States and even Jordan defending them, Saudi Arabia, I believe UAE perhaps, defending them against the missiles, certainly Jordan did. And so I just don't understand why it couldn't have ended one round earlier. Why did we have to roll the dice and potentially have damage to a nuclear facility or potentially have more civilians die than was planned and necessitate a response by Iran?
Yeah, I think I have an answer to that. I think it's because they're playing poker and Iran has the weaker hand, and they know it. So it's not like Iran couldn't do massive damage to Israel, America, and many other countries if we get into this huge disastrous war. They have a very capable military that would do massive damage. But almost everybody in leadership would probably die in Iran. So they know that. And so the one with the weaker hand is the one that doesn't retaliate when the other guy sends fireworks, right, or firecrackers. So that's just the way that this works. So I'm okay with it. And so I like what Francesca's saying, that at the end it's gonna get lighter and lighter until they're doing like a slap fight like this.
Yes.
Like, yes, I'll take it. I'll take the slap fight.
I think, Jake, you're really right. No, just on that point, I think you're right. And I also think it plays into Israel's narrative that they were the victims. In Israel's mind, and a lot of Western media's mind, this began when Iran sent 300 plus drones and missiles over to Israeli territory, right? We even forgot about the attack on the embassy in Damascus. And then some media outlets were like, oh, right, there was that thing. And to be fair, it was also the same day that 7 humanitarian workers were killed by Israel. But lastly, like, this is part of a shadow war on Iran for decades now. There have been nuclear scientists who've been assassinated. There have been generals like Qasem Soleimani who was assassinated. There have been, data breaches and viruses released. I mean, on and on and on. I think Cenk's right that of course Iran doesn't have the upper hand, so it's not like they can react to every single one of them. But let's remember who's been doing the provoking of this World War III these many years, and that's Israel.
Oh, I'd just like to quickly throw out, and Jake, I'm sure that you have thoughts. We should also bear in mind, to be totally fair, responses can be the explicit kind, the drones and the missiles and all that stuff. And then there are also other responses, funding of groups and illicit actions and acts of terrorism and things like that. So simply because ICBMs weren't fueled up or launched doesn't mean that Iran hasn't been doing other attacks or won't respond in some way, but at least not in a way that seems designed to catch the international eye and escalate the threat of all-out war.
Yeah, the proxy groups are gonna keep hitting each other, meaning like Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. will still fire at Israel. Israel will still fire at them in both Gaza and Lebanon. That we're used to. We just don't want Israeli soil or Iranian soil getting hit, because that leads to further hostilities and war. And just to pick up on a couple of things you guys mentioned, I agree with Francesca. Biden should get significant credit for this. If he really was behind this, and very likely was behind Israel's light reaction here, well played, nice job, Joe Biden. Now you haven't heard me say that in a long time, especially on the issue of Israel and Joe Biden. But our job is to be fair. Like, I know that trips people out in other parts of media. They're like, wait, I don't get it. Are you pro or anti-Biden? I'm not either. I'm just telling you what actually happened in the news, right? And explaining it in a fair way. Also, poor Syria. Anyone can hit Syria for any reason. That's not even an issue. Like, I mean, Israel now hits Syria anytime it wants, but once it hit a consulate of Iran inside Syria, it became an issue. Like, the Syrians aren't even considered as a country. Like, anybody can violate their sovereignty. And it's not just Israel. I mean, people hit Syria from all angles now. And of course, to be clear, the main culprit there is Bashar al-Assad, who created so much chaos through the civil war and his dictatorship there that has created this situation. But two really important things that John said that I want to pick up on. So John Bolton, Lindsey Graham, et cetera, wanted us to start a much, much bigger war. Morons. See, told you we could avoid a bigger war, at least for now. Like, they think your only possible answer is war, right? Yeah. And so we just showed you that is not the only possible answer. they were wrong because they always say like, "Oh, war's inevitable anyway. A massive war is inevitable, so we might as well start it." No, not inevitable. As always, the neocons are ridiculously wrong. And finally, speaking of which, whenever I debate these guys, including Prager the other day in DC when I did that debate, they always paint the Iranian leaders as irrational, zealot madmen that you can't negotiate with, you can't have a peace treaty with, you can't do anything with, because if you go into the room, they're frothing at the mouth and they just want to kill Jews and they'll do anything. Well, no, they just got hit on their own sword. They're not even going to counterstrike. They're not irrational zealots. They're terrible people. I don't like them at all. They're fundamentalists, and I think they're oppressing their own people. But they're not nuts. They know how to preserve their own power and their own lives, and they've acted very rationally here, given that they would like to keep staying in power and staying alive and avoiding this war. Yeah. So that's just propaganda, and honestly, a little bit like racist propaganda. Oh, 100%. You know how those Muslims are. They're all frothing at the mouth, madmen, zealots, and you can't even talk to them. All you could do is violence. Wait, you're the one advocating for violence and you sound like a madman, not them. And so that's usually the case with neocons.
Yeah. Well,
and you're the one perpetrating violence. Like, I'm sorry, like let's remember this is happening in a context of 34,000 mostly civilians who've been murdered. So like, who's doing the irrational violence right now? Israel.
Yeah, and it's not just Israel, it's the neocon mindset also here in America, which is anytime you hear someone say, all they understand is violence, what they mean is all I understand is violence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and bear in mind that in Iran, they seem to be maneuvering politically, strategically to avoid war and still do horrific repression of their own people. We're not gonna forget about the protests and all that. Whereas we have all these people like John Bolton who are not these godless savages, but they're trying to move the playing pieces on the board to get us into an all-out war. So just bear that in mind. And also, I'll give you something to think about as we go to our first break. We don't know for sure how much or how influential Joe Biden was in determining the outcome of this or influencing the outcome. But Donald Trump often says like, blank wouldn't happen if I were in office. Like Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. Nothing would have happened on October 7th. But what about this event? If it had been Trump and he'd been talking with Israel, would it have been as light of an attack?
Well, look, so since we're all being over the top fair, which is what we're supposed to do, and I say that because just in so many other parts of the media, what you'll see is Biden is terrible, Biden is great, right? Et cetera, et cetera. No, there's nuance here. So Trump actually once did say no to a counterattack on Iran. If you remember, the John Boltons of the world said, you should hit him again. And he said,
that's right.
Nah, it's okay. People are gonna get killed and we'll get into war, forget it. And I was shocked by that. I was blown away by it. And credit where credit is due on that. Now, having said
what was that in response to them attacking our soldiers after he assassinated Qasem Soleimani?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm still saying he did. Now, thankfully, in that
there
case,
was still the assassination.
He did the very aggressive thing. They were relatively restrained, thankfully, in that case, like in this case.
Yeah. So that's true. That's absolutely right. That's all of the actual facts of the case. Then you can make a judgment call on what you think, how much credit Trump or Biden deserves. But for my judgment call, I think John's making a great point about today, which is, if this continues and there is no larger war, Biden definitely gets to say, because I was in charge, we didn't have a larger war. And I think that's a big thing to brag about. So let's see how it goes. We're not out of the woods completely yet. But if Biden did avoid this war as it looks like now, I would give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
I think he does not deserve credit unless he actually puts pressure on Israel to stop genociding. So yes, it just proves that he has control. He has more control than he lets on about Israel and about Netanyahu.
No, Franny, I totally agree with you, but I'm just saying those are two different issues. One is avoiding the war with Iran, and the other is the genocide that's going on in Gaza. And on that, he gets zero credit.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, we're gonna take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
All right, back on the break here. All right, Chris Birch writes in on Super Chat, very nice comment. This power panel is simply the best, bar none. John, as a wrestling fan, I think it's only right that you acknowledge Cenk as the final hoss.
That's not bad.
We all know he's the GOAT. Love you all. Have a great weekend. Thank you. And Malherby Senatus writes in, good work, TYT. We appreciate you as well. Mike Oviant writes in the YouTube member section, hello, Cenk, John, and Francesca. I have my votes in for TYT, TDR, and Indisputable for the Shorty Awards. Love it. All three of us, all three shows are nominated. Please vote and vote every day because you're allowed to. It's not voter fraud. This election is not rigged. Okay, so go to tyt.com/TYT vote. tyt.com/TYT vote. Vote for us on the shorties. It'd be great to win those awards. We'd love to get to double digits. We've got 9 Webbies, shorties, and streamies.
9?
Yeah, this would get us into double digits if we win any of them, let alone all 3.
And once you're logged in, it's super quick to do the daily votes. Like you could vote for all 3 in a very small amount of time. But if you don't have all of that time, just vote for TDR.
Okay,
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, totally. Drink Your OJ says, I've only been a YouTube member for 2 months, but I've been a TYT sub for several years now. I love the honest and transparent relationship with the viewers. Keep it up. Thank you. We appreciate it. Then I'm going to Twitch for a second. Gal471 said, is this TDR with an extra guest? Okay, there you go. And he puts in parentheses, Cenk. No, we got that. Okay, anyway. Microgram says, I'd rather around downplay it than escalate. There you go, 100%. Jules to you says, giving Israel credit. Christ, I gotta hear this, LOL. Well, you just heard it. Curious what you think of it. You could write back in. Let's go to members on our website. Ashura Azumi writes in, drop it like it's Trump's jaw when he falls asleep in court. We're gonna get to that story later.
Very good.
Cenk's left tricep of fury continues the niceness by saying Franny, Cenk, and Johnny Ty is like the Avengers of progressives.
Nice.
Wow, thank you, appreciate it. Art Guy says, so the Iran and Israel attacks appear to have been statements of chest thump and saber rattling. I'm quietly optimistic that neither side actually wants to go to war. Well, so are we, as you can tell. So thank you. And I am out of time. Odin Dev, thank you for the gift on Twitch. We appreciate it. We'll be back. All right, back on Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, John Idarola, Francesca Fiorentini, and Trisha Briggs, Eric Schneider, and John Hughes, who are all American heroes who hit the join button below the video on YouTube. And then look at these heroes, Drink Your OJ, Benjamin, Shining Kimmy, Pop Tart Queen Dragon, all gifted a membership, and Chris Birch and Gabby Mathis gifted 5.
Damn.
You guys are the best. We appreciate you guys so much. If you want to help, there's one other way too. You could donate through tyt.com/team. You could also sign up through that for our website, tyt.com/team, and we definitely do need it. You see it right before your eyes. A media company, digital media company going down about 2 a week now. That's the pace we're at. All right, John.
Okay. Jury selection in former President Donald Trump's New York City criminal hush money trial has finally concluded, with all 18 New Yorkers now sat on the jury. The 12 main jurors, the 6 alternates, all ready to go. And that caps off a week where multiple selected jurors either ended up removing themselves from the jury or were removed, either because they revealed information about themselves that had previously been inaccurately stated, or they felt the pressure was simply too great. And even earlier today, while the final ones were being selected, some of them literally broke down in court over the anxiety they were feeling about whether they could be impartial in this case. With one woman breaking down while talking about having served prison time in another state later said she felt people should be held accountable for their actions, quote, because that's what I went through. Another was overcome with emotion as she answered basic questions in the jury box, saying, this is so much more stressful than I thought it would be. Both of them were excused. Now, it took 1 week to finalize this jury, but bear in mind, everyone said it was gonna be incredibly difficult to do so. And most did not think that it would be able to be done in 1 week, but it's now done. And on Monday, we're going to have opening arguments from both the prosecution and the defense. We were already into this thing. It seems fast, but for Donald Trump, it's still taking too long. He truthed, this trial is a long, rigged endurance contest dealing with nasty, crooked people who want to destroy our country, MAGA 2024. So it's taking too long, it takes great endurance. That's why he takes so many preemptive naps. Or does he think that it's really long? Because 4 minutes after putting that on Truth Social, he said, Judge Merchant is railroading me at breakneck speed in order to completely satisfy his friends. I guess they're not real friends. Additionally, he has gagged me. And I don't care about the rest of that, but so is it taking too long and it's a marathon, or is this thing happening like a sprint? Which is it? Which way are you whining about this case now? Seemingly all of them. It's taking too long and it's going way too fast. By the way, while he's complaining in a variety of different ways, earlier today, another one of his attempts to get the trial moved out of Manhattan was shot down. That makes 40, I think. The thing is going to continue. It's going to continue in Manhattan, and that's what's important. And look, we have our jury now. We'll see what the quality of the jury is. But before we discuss, I do want to point out one thing, which is that, as I alluded to, there were people who had been on the jury that were taken off. And one of those women ended up taking herself off because of the fact that so many people were focusing on her, discussing her, revealing information about her, most notably perhaps Jesse Waters. And as a result of that, the judge actually admonished the media and told them to stop attacking or stop reporting on so many of the details of the jurors. And of course, as you saw in that picture, he immediately went on the air that night to continue doing the same thing. Once again, going on an extended monologue about how every one of the very minor bits of information, the trivia we had about these people, immediately made them suspect. And so we're not gonna play the video of him actually doing that. But just bear in mind that his audience, the audience on Fox News, are all convinced that this thing is going to be rigged, not just in the ways they already thought it was, but in terms of the jury as well. So with that said, what do you think?
Yeah, so far so good. I think that the judge and the lawyers are both doing a good job. I don't think the Trump lawyers have asked anything outrageous. They're doing normal voir dire where you're trying to pick the jurors that are most favorable to your client. Prosecutors are doing the same thing. And asking about people's backgrounds is perfectly understandable in this case. For example, they found out that one guy had put up on social media that Trump was the devil. Probably don't have him on the jury, okay? So, and that's not him trying to infiltrate the jury. He was just one of the jurors that they called up, and they're like, okay, so what do you think? He's like, well, I think Trump's the devil. Okay, well, there you go, off you go, right? And another guy said, well, I disagreed with Trump a couple times, but otherwise he's awesome. Also, there you go, out you go, okay? So, and that makes sense, guys. That's how you're trying to pick as unbiased a jury as you can. Look, we're gonna get to the guy who lit himself on fire. Luckily, not one of the jurors, okay? But we'll get to that in a sec. But I am curious what you guys think. I mean, where's the line, right? Because is it if you voted for Trump, you can't be on the jury? And I know they're not asking about who you voted for. Or if you support Trump, you can't be on the jury. Or if you voted against him or you don't support him, you can't be on the jury. Or only non-political people. And it just, I don't know. I think it's very, very hard to draw the lines. I think they're doing the best they can. By the way, there's like a couple of lawyers, a couple of therapists, and a couple of engineers on the jury. 7 men, 5 women, and then there's 6 alternates as well. But so far from what I have read, all is good on the Western Front, or on the Eastern Front in this case. I'll mention one other funny thing though. Trump's in one of his rants, I'd like to do it in John's voice, I'll do it in mine, in my Trump imitation voice. He's like, why is this Trump, this rigged trial happening in New York and not in Pennsylvania or North Carolina? Because your business is based in New York and that's where you did the fraud. You didn't do it in North Carolina, you did it in New York. He's amazing, man. He still doesn't get that. He's really one of the, I mean, look, there's no other way to say it. He's one of the dumbest people I've ever seen in public life. Okay, Francesca, what do you think?
No, I mean, first of all, I love that your Trump impression is just Alec Baldwin's doing Trump and John's is just Stephen Colbert doing Trump. It really is like,
totally.
Nobody's got anything unique to offer like me. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say.
Different. I like it.
No, but look, this is truly, could Trump be elected dog catcher in New York? In Manhattan. And I think that's fascinating because the answer might be yes. Because here you have a swath of clearly 18 people who've been in a coma for the last 8 years, right? Which is incredible. Like imagine, so there's that, right? Like how is he gonna fare in Manhattan? And he knows people hate him there generally. But the other part of it is also like, who is impartial about Donald Trump? Like who has been paying at all, even cursory attention to the last 8 years and been going like, I'm normal. Nobody. So these people, here's the way I see it. I think these people are masterful at concealing their passion either one way or another, or they truly are living in a bubble and have just woken up from a coma, in which case I want their brain and I love that. But I think it takes so much not wherewithal, but bravery. You're sitting in the same in the same room as Donald Trump. You're judging him. Like that is terrifying. He's staring each and every one of these jurors down. I don't think we fully grasp just how unprecedented and wild and difficult it is going to be on this jury.
Yeah, and if that does intimidate you, just speak in a low voice. He'll fall asleep sooner or later, and then you can go right back to judging him. He won't even know.
But the minute you mention his name, he'll wake up like Rumpelstiltskin. So Trumpelstiltskin is what I was trying to spit out.
There you go.
Yes.
So look, I agree. It is hard to imagine. It's hard to conceive of a person who doesn't have an opinion one way or the other, and yet has the mental faculties to sit through and judge a trial like this. That said, we'll see who they got. I mean, I know. What's interesting to me is less the question of can they be impartial, and for me, and I know maybe sometimes we veer too much into media criticism, is what people actually want them to be impartial, because everybody's implying they want impartiality. Okay, and maybe questioning whether they will be, but stating that they want it. I don't think everyone wants that at all, and I think with good cause. Jesse Waters has no interest in an impartial jury. And he's been fairly clear about that in his videos talking about this. When the most political thing a person says is, that I want to weigh the evidence or whatever, he is suspicious of that because he doesn't want an impartial jury. He is only comfortable with those who would never under any circumstances convict Donald Trump. And the reason for that is I am afforded the luxury of being perfectly comfortable having no one who's like a super big Biden fan or hates Donald Trump's guts, because I am confident that the case that they'll make and the evidence they will present will be really bad for Donald Trump. That satisfies me. On the other hand, they also know that that evidence is going to be damning of Donald Trump. And that's why they're not relying on the legal team or anything like that. They've been fairly clear. Clay Travis has said it. We need a saboteur. We need a sleeper cell. They clearly think that's the only answer to any of this.
Yeah, I actually want to say, because they're asking them what kind of media they consume. So for example, if Foreman watches MSNBC and Fox and reads the New York Times. Interesting. So I don't know what that says about him. Maybe he's unbiased. Hey, and I bet you a lot of people who are against Trump are like, oh no, he watches Fox News too, he must be a bad guy. And a lot of Trump people are like, oh no, he watches MSNBC too, he must be a bad guy. Hold on. So, but if anybody on the jury watches Young Turks and is a TYT infiltrator for us, I do have a mission for you. Are you ready? Your mission is to be fair. So listen to the evidence, don't prejudge Trump, and you're not trying Trump as a human being. You're trying him for these crimes. And listen to the evidence, and if it turns out he's guilty, convict him. If it turns out you're not sure and it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, don't convict him. Just be fair. Boom. Boom, we got infiltrators now.
You know what? I want to add myself onto that as well. I agree. Do that.
This guy.
No, but really, I'm actually comfortable with an impartial process.
You know what though? I think it's, it reminds me of jury trials when the person sitting, the defendant is a cop. And we all know it's very difficult to actually get a jury conviction of a police officer because by and large, no matter whether even people who have had negative encounters with police officers generally respect law enforcement, or at least want to, right? Like that's their goal, it's aspirational. So I actually, I don't wanna play crystal ball here and be like, all right, what's gonna happen? But I think it'll be very difficult to get a conviction because he's a former president, because it is so difficult to get a group of people to go against, it feels like, and what the right wants you to believe, it going against the office of president, and how it often works out with cops who have killed innocent people or have brutalized them. It might work out for Trump in that way too. I'm just putting that out there.
And I will also, and I'll close with this because I know we have to get on this other angle. If you are concerned about it being an unfair process, in that the evidence will be irrelevant, the arguments will be irrelevant, the witnesses will be irrelevant. It's just gonna come down to one side got their person on or the other side got their person on. You need to bear in mind that is not an even playing field. Because for that to work for the prosecution, they need to get 12 of their people on. The defense only needs to get one of their people on. One MAGA person who would refuse under any circumstances, one MAGA person who would watch Donald Trump choke their wife to death and then let them walk free. That sort of person, you only need one of those. The defense, if they're gonna swing this thing with no case, they need a full dozen. And everybody's acting like this is an even thing. It is anything but.
That's a great
but
point.
Thank you, I try to make 1 or 2 of those a day. Anyway, with that said, let's turn now to a darker aspect of this. A man set himself on fire outside the Manhattan courthouse where Donald Trump was being tried earlier today and left the scene in critical condition. Still alive, at least as of when they left the scene, although in these sorts of circumstances, obviously that is a serious set of injuries, and so who knows what the future will bring. But we do have some details coming from the scene and about the individual. He had a sign apparently saying something about Trump and Biden working together to orchestrate a coup, and another alleging some kind of Ponzi scheme. Since that time, a detailed manifesto has turned up online. We obviously will not be displaying that or reading that or anything like that. The man apparently told a woman to get away with him before he doused himself with gasoline, threw some flyers in the air, and then doused himself again before flicking a lighter and catching fire. The witness was apparently 15 feet away, although people said that the heat could be felt 100 feet away from the fire that this man was engulfed in. Some of the flyers apparently referred to some conspiracy theories about NYU and generalized conspiracy theories, anti-government conspiracy theories about the CIA and the government at large. And so who knows if we'll have more details about this individual in the immediate aftermath of a horrendous, almost unthinkable tragedy like this. It seems kind of irrelevant, but it is an unfortunate thing that happened, certainly.
Yeah, so in these type of circumstances, it's either a person who's like the best person on earth or someone who's got significant mental health problems. I say that because yes, some Buddhist monks care so much about the violence going on in conflicts like Vietnam and now Gaza that they'll light themselves on fire in protest, and it's happened in a couple other instances. It is an enormously extreme way to get attention to your cause, and obviously I don't recommend it, to say the least. Don't do that, terrible idea. But look, there are some people who do it with good intent, even though I don't agree with it, right? But of course, a lot have mental health issues, and the family here is saying that he had it. And you could tell, I read a piece of his manifesto is online now, and I read some of it, and I'll give you a small sample of it. Any manifesto has things that are true in it, right? Like, oh, this politician is a bad guy for X, Y, Z. Yeah, the politicians are bad guys and probably for X and Z, but maybe not Y. But then when you get into Bill Clinton might have initiated Rob Lowe's sexual abuse when he was a teenager, because Rob Lowe supported Mike Dukakis over Bill Clinton in that primary. Okay, no, not a Buddhist monk, guy who's obviously having some issues. And I feel terrible about it. This is not the right way to go, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just all it is super unfortunate. It's not on anybody's side, and there's no like political angle here where anybody gets to go ha ha. And he didn't hurt anyone else, he just hurt himself. And he's not okay, but he didn't die, and they're taking care of him in the hospital now.
Yeah, I mean, it's initially, like, I'm glad we're getting a full picture, because initially I think it is relevant, right? It depending on if is he a Trump supporter, is he protesting Trump, what could this be? And I think a lot of us were racking our brains. But yes, it does seem like he has some kind of mental illness. I really hope he pulls through. He is throwing Trump and Biden under the bus in some of his manifestos and his writings and whatnot. But like, it's not irrelevant to what was happening. It just seems like he used what was happening as an opportunity to draw attention to himself. That being said, I'm reminded, of course, of Air Service member Aaron Bushnell, who killed himself the same way to protest the genocide in Gaza. And I'll continue to remember him as we remember those Buddhist monks who also did something similar.
Yes, it was an incredible act of conscience, but still, guys, don't do it. There's much, much better ways to protest. All right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, more news. All right, so as I go to the members here, remember guys, if you are going to be generous with us, we appreciate you so much. But check out tyt.com/perks to see what you could name in the studio. $100 gets you on the honor roll, by the way. $250 gets you the special t-shirt for this drive. And then everything else, like us leaving voicemails, naming things in the studio, check that out under tyt.com/perks. Obviously later we'll be doing Turks and Perks. And somebody did buy Anna's gavel and named it Charlie Rules, so we're feeling awesome about that. Again, Tracy, thank you for doing that. All right, let's go to Luke Weiss, Sam G in our member section. Cenk, outstanding job on the zero hedge debate and dominating Prager and Batya. Anyone with sense would be compelled by your arguments. Favorite quote related to the neocon slogan, I forgot the question, but the answer is war. Thank you, I like that line, so thank you for acknowledging that. You know, sometimes the right wing's so funny. So they watched it, and now a lot of the right wing agrees with us on Israel. And so, but they hate me so much that they're like, that was great, our side definitely won. I hate Cenk, but Dave Smith did a great job. Dave Smith did a great job, but I hate Cenk. Okay, God bless, I'll take it. Anna Salty tweet says, everyone who supported the Iraq war needs to drink a tall glass of shut up juice when it comes to war with Iran. You're here on that. Eclectic Miscellany with a couple of comments. Agree to disagree with Cenk. Iran and Israel both are needlessly playing with starting World War III. Let's say one of these quote unquote fireworks accidentally got through and killed people. Would the other side have said, oh, that's okay, no worries, we won't retaliate because we know you weren't trying to kill anyone? I hear you, don't get me wrong. I don't want them to do any of it at all. I'm saying only in the scenario where they're definitely going to do one. I would much rather have it be a lighter one like this. But otherwise, of course, I agree with you. Later he wrote in, can we get a Trump off between Cenk, John, and Francesca to see who does the best Trump impression? You know what? Maybe we could put that under tyt.com/perks.
That's right.
And then we could, and then the audience could vote. Now we're on to something. I'm not even kidding anymore. That's kind of a fun contest.
And if we need a tiebreaker, it's our Greta.
No.
Oh, I was gonna say Alex Jones because I feel like the two of you got me.
Oh yeah.
Got me on that.
Yeah. I'm happy to do Alex Jones. See, that's not a good one, so it could be a real contest.
No, it's lower. It's even lower.
Yeah, all right. So I love it. See, we do the show with the audience. Good idea. Cool AF Boomer Mom writes in, at 67, I simply cannot vote for another neocon. I've been voting for this lesser of two evil thing for far too long. Keep bringing us hope, Cenk, Frankie, and John. You've been keeping me sane since I joined in 15. Oh, that's awesome.
Damn.
Thank you. Socialized hole, and I'll leave it at that. Writes in, if you all are trying to raise $1 million, a shirtless John calendar would go a long way. So I just can't exploit John's body in that way.
We could raise dozens of dollars.
Yeah, dollars and dollars could be raised from that. But now that idea has left us with no time. All right, we'll be back.
Sorry.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Franny with you guys. Also TJ Kiwat, who just hit the join button below. I know that sounded like TJ Watt for a second, and everybody in Pittsburgh got excited. John Fox and William Zaragoza gifted Young Turks memberships on YouTube, and we appreciate you guys. John.
We do, and in return, we will present you with the news. This week, an Arizona state representative, as well as a Turning Point Action official named Austin Smith, was busted for allegedly having committed election fraud. Now, ironically, that's what the Turning Point organization has been saying a lot about the last few years. Remember, of course, Charlie Kirk's involvement with organizing some of the people who went to the protests in DC. But we're gonna focus on this individual for now, and he has responded to the allegations. We will give you that as well in just a moment. Here's what happened, basically. A lawsuit was filed earlier this week, accused Smith of using fraudulent signatures on the petition required to qualify for the Republican primary ballot. He had already been elected, as we alluded to, was running for re-election to his second term in the Arizona House, and according to the complaint, several of Smith's petition sheets bore purported voter signatures that appear to have been written by the same person. Many of those signatures bear a striking resemblance to Smith's himself. Now, either of those would have been a problem, but apparently both were true. And specifically, it was alleged that he had forged, or that someone had forged, 100 of the 826 signatures that were there. Which at that point, seems a bit lazy. Get the 100 extra signatures. Like, is that a day or two more of work? Like, are you gonna barter your political future of the fact that you didn't wanna canvass a little bit more? But apparently that's the direction that was gone in. The lawsuit included sworn statements from 2 voters whose signature appeared on the petition saying they did not sign his petitions. And as I said, he has responded. He has announced that he would be ending his re-election campaign. He denies the claims of election fraud, but says that with this legal battle forthcoming, he would be simply too distracted in terms of time as well as money to deal with that, and he would rather clear his name and potentially return to politics or elected office at some point rather than attempting to do both at the same time. He said, what I was told was that this was a very intense effort to, quote, get me. And I needed to be prepared to spend tens of thousands of dollars to defend myself, not only against the civil elections matter, but most likely against some sort of criminal investigation that would be launched by those on the left who are unhappy with my politics. I might be confident of victory, but all it would take is a judge believing any one person and all would be lost. To be better protected in the future, if and when I run again for something, I'll rely exclusively on the online signature system and eliminate paper petitions from my campaign. Then no one can make up any stories. Well, that's the statement now. We will see what comes out in the eventual legal battle, but what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm not at all surprised by this. And so lately, when there's a voter fraud story, it's almost always a Trump supporter. And they almost always have the same ideology. In this case, the guy claims he's not doing it. So we'll find out in court if that's true or not, but it doesn't look good for him on the public information that we have. So, but my guess as to his motives is similar to what all the other guys who did voter fraud on behalf of Trump say, which is, oh, they're doing it anyway, so I thought I'd do it too, huh? Why do they only get to do it? Well, because, brother, they're not doing it. You just believe the conspiracy theory that isn't at all true. And so, and I see it also in other instances where Trump or somebody on his side will say, "Oh yeah, when we get into office, then we're going to arrest Pelosi and Biden and Schumer." And I'm like, yeah, but that's not how democracy works. You don't just arrest your political opponents for no reason. Like, oh, why you did it to Trump? But guys, he actually broke laws. So if you say, hey, like I got Nancy Pelosi on insider trading, here's my actual information, etc., and she broke this specific law and it looks like you're right, then yes, I'm 100% with you, no politicians above the law. But you can't just say for no reason at all, I don't like you, so I'm gonna arrest you for no reason and I'm gonna make you a political prisoner because you did it to us. But we didn't do it to you. So that's not a way of thinking about it that makes any sense at all. And so here, I'm guessing, but I'm telling you, at some point, if he ever confesses, he's gonna say, I knew they were doing it, I knew. That's not a legal defense, and that's not a smart way of conducting your life. It's like what children do.
Yeah, no, and remember how like every Republican operative is also registered in Florida and votes in Florida and votes like out of state and always votes in a swing state, but we're not supposed to talk about that. Yeah, I mean, it is exactly that, Cenk. I think the other thing is, when they know they can't win, the right will cheat, which is amazing because we live in a gerrymandered to crap, country here, and that favors people. That favors the right, that favors people with money, favors people who can take the time off to go vote, whatnot. This guy definitely could have, if not himself gotten the signatures, also hired someone to do that. But didn't, John, you just say that he was already on the ballot? It was a re-election? I'm not even sure what he was doing.
Sorry, this was to qualify for the primary ballot on the Republican side.
Okay, yeah. Okay. But exactly that. It's like when they can't win in the system, they will cheat. And then when they get caught cheating, because it's only about getting caught, they say, well, the Democrats are importing all of these illegals, in quotes, and then, getting them to vote Democrat. They're marching them right into the voting booths. It's like, right, with that worldview, it automatically justifies any kind of cheating that you're going to do. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that like a Project Veritas would uncover about a so-called left-wing organization like Acorn, and that would be done. That would be it. Close up shop, Turning Points USA, yeah, out of here. But this, of course, is like, oh, this is fine. Nope, it's just, we're gonna keep going.
Well, and Ellen was stating that he, in addition to ending his re-election bid, he has also resigned as Senior Enterprise Director of Turning Point Action. He did not publicly announce it, but apparently he's no longer with the organization. He wants to spend more time with his signature, repeating it over and over and over again, allegedly. Anyway, with that said, why don't we do our last story? Close things out, we're gonna end with something fun or horrifying if you stop and think about it for long enough. Let's move to this. Move over, Miss America. The services of you humans will no longer be needed. Miss AI is coming for your awards, trophies. What are they getting at? I don't know. But the world's first AI beauty pageant is coming, and it allows AI-generated contestants and creators to compete for the coveted title of Miss AI. Okay, this is part of the World AI Creator Awards. So it's a suite of different competitions, all honoring efforts in AI. This is the beauty pageant version of that. And we want to look in, we're going to talk about the judges and how this is going to be decided and how you perhaps could compete. But first, what are they competing on? These AI generated individuals are going to need to master these three areas: beauty. Of course, it's a beauty pageant. Contestants will be judged on some of the classic aspects of pageantry, including their beauty, poise, and their unique answers to questions like, if you could have one dream to make the world a better place, what would it be? Obviously, the answer is fewer humans. They have to be better on tech. Contestants will earn points for their skill and implementation of AI tools used to create the digital masterpieces, including prompt engineering, output, visual detailing, hands, eyes, and backgrounds, as well as social clout, because of course many of these AI creations are themselves online influencers. And so that'll be assessed based on their engagement numbers with fans, rate of growth of audience, and how utilization of other platforms such as Instagram have gone for them. And it's 100% free. You can use any AI software. But if you do want to compete in this, you should probably get started, because I have a feeling Brett is generating an entry right now. But anyway, let's turn now to who will be judging this. So these are the judges. You have 4. 2 of them are humans. Which do you think it is? No, obviously.
Because that's the thing I was so confused by.
The
guy is a real person. Yes,
white.
that is true. But since AI is apparently incapable of producing anything other than the most exaggerated, impossible depiction of an anime come to true, to the flesh sort of appearance, 2 of those are digital influencers themselves, 2 of them are humans. I would imagine that since the 2 AI models are themselves controlled by humans, that those effectively are the judges. But of course, you're not gonna, I guess, find out who they are. But anyway, there is money on the line as well. So we can put that up as we get into the discussion. Thousands of dollars of rewards and PR support apparently as well.
Yeah, that's the thing I was most confused by. I'm like, wait, are those judges real or are they AI? Because one of them definitely looks like AI, right? And so, okay, but that goes to the exact point of the story, which is no one's gonna know what's real anymore, right? Like you might get a sense that one of those judges was AI, but the other one looks like just a pretty woman, right? And I didn't think I thought that was a real person. So I'm to this moment I'm still confused as to what's real and not real. But I think that there's something really interesting in this. So I get all of the reasons why they do what they do, like the social clout. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because it's almost like letting the public vote. Hey, who's getting more interest online, right? The tech part, yeah, if you created a Picasso-like image, you're probably not gonna win, brother, right? So, but to me, what's more interesting is what is everybody's different AI creation that they think is the perfect look? Because John and I are not going to agree, and Francesca is not going to agree with us, and we would all have a different creation of what the perfect woman or man looks like. Yeah, and that's slightly interesting.
I already married mine, but
yeah.
Oh yeah, ooh, yeah. So yeah, I'm not gonna let him just get away with that.
This is just like, you know. At one point, we all thought the future was going to be female. The future is robots, people, and it's depressing as hell. And welcome to it. I think one of the challenges that these AI influencers will face is how many jobs they can steal simultaneously. The graphic designer's job, a model's job, a beauty pageant. Look, I didn't really have that much respect for beauty pageant contestants until now, damn it. All right, it takes a lot of hard work to think of what your dreams are maybe and how to solve world hunger-ish things. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, but there's real skill there, truly. And so this is just like, it's so gross. And I have a question to you two, and this is actually the second time I've asked this question of 2 men before about this exact same story, but there are right now dudes online following AI influencers, which is the creepiest set of words since crypto PACs, super PACs. AI influencers literally undermining the world of influencers, which is already a precarious job. But anyway, I digress. There are dudes online going like, responding to AI influencers in the comments going, you look really good here. Fire emoji, fire emoji. Wow, you've got a beautiful smile. Like, they aren't even real. What is going on? Do you think a robot lady model is going to respond to your comments? Who is this for? Well, they're not real.
Francesca, maybe I can answer a little bit of that. So first of all, thanks to AI chatbots, it might well be able to respond. That's kind of the thing. You referenced a few things there.
No, but it is not a...
Let me answer.
Look,
you referenced guys following them. You also referenced guys commenting to them. I have very different feelings about those 2 things. It seems initially weird. Why would you follow one of these accounts? But from the point of view of the consumer in this example, if it's convincing, what's the difference, I guess? They just want a titillating image to look at. Like, does it fundamentally matter in any philosophical way about whether it's real or not? Now, I agree with you, sending the comments seems a little bit weird because it's not a person who can respond to you. But theoretically, let's say that it's managed by an AI chatbot that can respond. If you don't know that it's AI, and based on the comments I've seen, many of these guys do not appear to know that.
No, they know it.
The feeling that it gives you,
says it
is
in
that
their
not
bio.
Indistinguishable? Sure, but I don't know that they're necessarily real.
I love how every like thirsty thirsty weirdo is writing down what you said verbatim. Yeah, what? It's philosophically the difference between following and liking. But in
Francesca, jokes aside, I don't follow these. But what is the difference? If it's a horny guy who wants to occasionally load Instagram and see an attractive model in a swimsuit, what does it matter in terms of what he gets from it if it's a person or not?
It does. No, of course it doesn't. Okay, so you want to really get into it? Are you ready to go? You trying to go? Let's go. Look, I think it doesn't matter to that guy. He's gonna get horny no matter what, or that woman or anybody. You get horny how you get horny, that's fine. My question is why you gotta leave the comment. That seems a little bit weird.
I agree.
It seems extra thirsty. Go outside, touch grass, talk to a real person. But the other thing is this, the world of influencers already reduces usually women to just their physical appearance, and they're hawking products left and right. And a lot of them rely on that money to make ends meet in our craptastic late stage capitalist hellscape. And so that you are replacing, even though, and don't make me feel for influencers, but man, I kind of do. You're replacing them already. It's like, at what point are we pushing people and just pay us a universal basic income? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it is all so gross, and it's just because we can.
Super fast, Francesca, to be clear, I don't like them being replaced either. I'm only talking about from the point of view of the guy. I don't want, especially the fact that these influencers, many of whom are women, are gonna be replaced by AI models. Many of them might be managed by men. That seems fundamentally wrong. So I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, so look, I'm with John. I only follow dozens of these accounts. Okay.
You brought that on yourself, my friend.
Right. So, but Francesca, at the same time, was it realistic when guys in the 80s, would write into their celebrity, crushes, Heather Thomas or Farrah Fawcett or whoever it was, and they'd write them letters and then expect them. Like, no, brother, they weren't gonna respond to you, they don't know you. And right now, we've got OnlyFans, right? And so those are real people, and they are real people. They do respond for money, right? And so, but at the same time, it's a fantasy, right? That you actually could be with them, you actually are friends, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a different version of that fantasy. And all this is all amateur hour anyway. I mean, and it's all different gradations, I would argue. The real deal is gonna be when we invent the holodeck, and then no one's ever gonna touch grass again, and you'll never see another male in a non-holodeck environment ever. So we're all just building up to that.
The reality though is that right now models are actually being replaced by AI, clothing models and whatnot. Like, again, these are industries that are real industries that people make an actual living in. There's real money won by real people in pageants, right? I don't know, I'm not saying I love it or I condone it, but you are replacing actual people. And the worst part is that they're being asked their thoughts. And who knows, to feed your AI, what you do? You go back to all of the pageants and you load their answers in. So you're actually stealing from people who've actually put thought, put work, and put effort into their answers, whatever it is. And then you're loading it into this AI model. This fake model. Anyway, so there's way bigger implications. Don't email me about this, please.
Okay, and look, for my part, I like imperfections. I think it gives person character. And so when they create these theoretically perfect women through the AI, I don't find it interesting. I find the real deal to be way more interesting. But okay.
They'll artificially model the imperfections soon, don't worry.
Yeah,
boobs are different sizes. Sometimes lefty, smaller than righty. Everyone needs to understand. Sometimes righty bigger, sometimes righty smaller. All right, with that.
We're definitely done. Okay, we got an amazing hour where again, I might agree a little bit with an alt-right figure. Buckle up, brace for impact. Everybody check out the Bitchuation Room. That's Francesca's podcast on the TYT Network. Everybody check out Damage Report. That's John's awesome show on the TYT Network. All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Omarosa. This is gonna be a big one. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Drop it. All right. right, back on the Young Turks. Okay, here we go. Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Khan, Maz Jobrani. Maz and Yasmin are both on Rebel headquarters. Make sure you're checking them out there. MazJobrani.com for tour dates.
Yes, sir. All my tour dates are there. I'm touring. I'm all over the place. Dallas, Detroit, maybe the Middle East.
Yeah, I do. Okay, we're gonna talk about that in a second. And Yasmin's also the host of Modern Context podcast. So we got a lot of news for you guys, but first I just wanted to have a quick discussion with Maz and of course with Yasmin as well. Actually, this might be our first, and I don't know, so you guys, I know Maz, but Yasmin, I'm not sure about you. Is this the first all Muslim power panel we've ever had?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, look at this.
Really practicing, but yeah.
I say I'm Muslim-ish because I don't really practice, but yes, this qualifies.
Okay, same.
Yeah, of course.
Baby steps, baby steps.
Okay, all born Muslim.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
All Muslim born power panel for the first time. Okay, fun for everybody. So Maz, Israel hits Iran, but they did it a kind of a what's described as a light strike, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on all this?
Gosh, as an Iranian American, first of all, I have been watching the country of my birth, Iran, fight with the country of my citizenship for the past 45 years. And every few years, it feels like we're gonna go to war. And every few years, every Iranian is thinking, oh my gosh, on the one hand, we don't like the government, right? Like the Islamic Republic is a totalitarian dictatorship and they're brutal to their people. On the other hand, you go, well, there's innocent people and war, as we know, is not a clean thing at all. So watching it from the outside, I always go, my gosh, what's it gonna solve if these two guys go to war? It feels like two guys are right now at a bar and they're going, let's go. And that's been for 45 years I've been watching that. And it's been either Iran and America or Iran and Israel. And this time it's really getting close. And like for example, when the Iranians struck into Israel, the only tweet I did, I said I need a drink when it was over and we hadn't gotten, no major damage had been done. So it's very nerve-wracking and it's very, and I don't know, gosh, I mean, who wins in war? Who wins? I guess the military, the weapons manufacturers, that's it, right?
Yeah, that's about it, and the oil companies.
And the oil companies, yeah. So it
but
really,
only if it's in the Middle East.
Oh,
and
yeah.
hey, look at that, it's almost always in the Middle East.
Yeah. So no, I'll be honest with you. I think that there's a portion of Iranians who hate the regime so much that they want someone to go to war with them because they think that that'll just oust the regime. But we've seen that's not how it works. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So I don't know how you get rid of this regime, but I also don't think that war is the answer.
Yeah, that's really interesting you said that. So one more thing, because I was on Piers Morgan having one of the 1,000 debates about Israel that I've been having, and somebody who's on the Israeli right-wing side, she said, oh no, people of Iran want to be bombed by Israel. Because they hate their regime so much and they abuse women. And I laughed out loud. I was like, yeah, really? The people of Iran want to be bombed by Israel. You just said that out loud. And she's like, oh my God, are you making fun of the women in Iran who are suffering right now? I'm like, no, I didn't say anything like that. I just said it's comical that they would want to be bombed by by Israel. But you just said that some people might want to be bombed. I've never heard that in my life.
No, I'm not saying that the people of Iran want to be. I'm saying that the people outside of Iran that are in the Iranian diaspora want someone to get rid of the regime. I'm also someone who does not like the regime. I would like the regime to go, if possible, and have a democracy in Iran that's not oppressive to women. I think most Iranians in Iran want that, obviously. But as you just said, the problem with bombing Iran is that, how many millions of innocent Iranians would have to die? Also, by the way, you're playing to the hands of the hardliners there who then say, oh, we're gonna shut everything down even more so. So it's a very complicated chess match, but I don't think a major war between Iran and Israel is good for most people in the world, except, like we said, the weapons manufacturers and oil companies.
Yeah, and if they get bombed, they're gonna rally around the flag. They're gonna rally around the regime we wanna get rid of. So it doesn't make any sense at all. But when you said diaspora, I was like, bingo. That's what. And then I realized, like, then a lot of people left comments because we were commenting on Reza Pahlavi's son, who's going around like he thinks he's going to be a king one day, clown of the earth. And so they'll flood this video with comments like, "Oh, what do you mean? He's the great folk. We want a dictator just like him and stuff." And they're like, "Yeah, it would be great if Israel bombed on our behalf." Hey, brother, if you're going to work for Israel, just say it, right?
Well, the thing on Reza Pahlavi, I'll tell you, I've actually met him before, and he's actually a smart person. And I know that, like, what he has said is that he wants to have the people of Iran decide on their future leader. But as you said, I think that there's a lot of supporters of his who are going, no, you got to be the leader. We want a king again. But those tend to be people in the diaspora. And again, I think ultimately what we can agree on at the base is that the Iranian regime is brutal. It's brutal to women. It's brutal to its religious minorities, which, by the way, is what I always tell Americans. We're headed that way with what the religious right is doing in America. I've seen this play out before because Iran, before the Islamic Republic, was not a perfect place, but it was freer than it is now. And they take women's rights away, then they take religious minorities' rights away. We're seeing it now in America. They go after the LGBTQ community. So there's a lot of oppressive things that would want one to get rid of the Islamic regime. But again, the question becomes, is a war between Iran and Israel, which, by the way, some people argue that this proxy war has been going on for a long time, and that's why people go, well, Israel. People that excuse Israel's hitting the embassy in Syria, they go, well, Iran has been doing a proxy war with them for years and years, so they were just it was tit for tat kind of a situation. But we're seeing it now escalate to the point where we really got to sit back and go, do we want that? And also, then America gets drawn into it. And we'd be in another. We just got out of Afghanistan, and we saw the results of that. We've seen Iraq. Is it better? I don't know. I guess Saddam is gone, but I don't know. For the average Iraqi and the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis that were killed in that war, was it better? I don't know. And then now we're seeing again. And by the way, some people say that Iran is the Islamic Republic is, they see him as a hero because they fought they hit the Israelis, and they say, well, they're the only ones standing up for the Palestinians. But the truth is that wasn't for it took the bombing of the embassy, the Iranian embassy in Syria for Iran to get involved. And it's the whole situation is like we've seen, like, after 6 months of Gaza being bombed, has it solved anything? The hostages are still there, and 30,000 innocent Palestinians have died. So what would a war with Iran and Israel actually achieve? You tell me. I don't know.
Yeah. So Yasmin, I mainly want to ask Maz, because he's originally from Iran, but is our all Muslim-born panel agreed that regime change in Iran would be awesome, but it's not up to us to do it, and it's not, and bombing would be counterproductive?
Yeah, and as Maz said, we're all part of diaspora communities, and with the Iranian community, according to what Maz was saying, there seems to be a discrepancy between what the people in the diaspora think should happen or could happen versus the people who are living there, because it is a very different thing to watch something from far away, from miles away, safe, knowing that you're not going to be the one bombed. So there's a lot of conflicting feelings going on there, not just conflicting geopolitical strategies that are being debated right now. No one wants to see this conflict escalate any further than it already has, but we always knew that the Middle East was a tinderbox. And in a lot of ways, Iran is kind of in the middle of a lot of that, even geographically speaking, right? So with all the proxy wars and the military bases and with all of that oil and even with the trade routes, and then on top of everything, there is the cultural and religious significance of that region. What we're seeing play out now is something that we had hoped was avoidable, but we know that it probably really never was avoidable. So, we can pray for a de-escalation at this point, but that seems highly unlikely because, as Maz alleged, there is a second Cold War that's been going on in the Middle East for a long time, for decades, really.
Yeah, and all great points. I think diaspora in a lot of ethnic communities is very different than the people who live in the homeland because we have a different perspective. We have different needs and wants. Like, for example, the Cuban diaspora, is desperate to do so, and certainly in the past was very desperate to do an actual invasion of Cuba, no matter who got hurt, because they wanted their land back, they wanted their property back, etc. They had different motivations than the people who live there. And a lot of it might have crossed over, but not the same, right? So let's be careful about taking someone's word for it just because they happen to be from that ethnic group. But it's good to hear different perspectives. And finally, I've never met a single human being who wants to be bombed by another country. So it's not the right way to go. Okay. We got to take a quick break here. We got a lot of great stories in a sec, including some unfortunate news about abortion and some unfortunate agreement I'm going to have with conservatives. We'll be back. All right, guys, I want to tell you about the Shorty Awards one more time. Young Turks, Indisputable, and Damage Report were all up for Shorties, and you get to vote on it, and you guys will decide who wins. People often complain that our audience is too large and too strong. That's actually literally where we get that statement of too strong from. So I love that. Let's go make that happen. Go to tyt.com/tytvote. You see it on the upper left there, tyt.com/tytvote, and you could vote once a day. So you can vote today and twice over the weekend. And the voting is going to be done by April 26th. We'd love to win those awards. We'd get into double digits if we won those on awards. It's kind of badass. We won best news show at least 3 times, best web show period, best web host. It's kind of nice. We almost never brag about it, which is surprising because I like bragging. Give us more weapons in our arsenal. We appreciate you guys. Mainly I brag about you guys. And finally, the perks, don't forget about them. You can name different things in the studio, tyt.com/perks, as we try to raise $1 million by the end of the year to keep in business, honestly. And you're seeing now a participant died this week. They did some great movies. They also did digital media. They did The Help, Spotlight, etc. Unfortunately, they went under, and Intercept's apparently in trouble. Anyways, but we have you guys holding us up, so we appreciate you. Speaking of which, Jenks Tricep of Fury just made a contribution on the through tyt.com/team, and we appreciate you. And then let's go to this kind of disagreement with me in the member section, which I love. Muddled Old Man Dragon said, Cenk, I really disagree with you that a person is born Muslim or any religion. I think a baby's brain has no empirical knowledge. Any religion is programmed early but still taught. No, brother, I totally agree with that, of course, right? But I only say it in the context of my Jewish friends call themselves Jewish even though they're all just as atheists as I am. Right? So, and part of the reason they do that is because they're culturally Jewish and they're proud of it. And so I don't want to say that I'm not Muslim because it feels like I'm backing away from what I was born as, especially as Muslims are attacked in America. I don't want to say, oh, I'm not Muslim. So I alternate between saying I'm an atheist or I'm Muslim born for that specific reason.
Yeah, I just so you know, I actually say Muslimish because I don't want to disappoint other Muslims who might see a drink in my hand and they go, what are you doing drinking? I go, I'm Muslimish. So don't hold me to a standard. I'm Muslimish.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that from you, Maz. I'm gonna start using that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Malcolm Fleshner used to work here, and he's the first person I heard saying he was Jewish, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And of course, he's also atheist. Lady Axe said, not for nothing, but what about doing a raffle for dinner with one of your favorite hosts? Winner gets their choice. Ooh, and they say that I'm her choice. Okay, well, I appreciate you. We have done that in the past. We will definitely consider it for this perk situation. We had people come in from different parts of the country and the world before. right back on TYT. Cenk, Yasmin, and Maz with you guys, but also Sheila Washington, S. Faye, Mrs. B777. They all just joined by hitting the join button below. We appreciate it. And Sam Monica gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. You guys are all awesome and I don't, I say American heroes, I believe that, but you're definitely heroes to us. So we appreciate you. Yasmin's got the next story.
Yeah, let's do it.
Dr. Lauren Colson, who represents a network of healthcare professionals in Idaho, says the restrictions on abortion care are taking a toll on those who fear repercussions of the law.
We're all worried about that pregnant person showing up in the ER that is destabilizing in front of us and that we can't do anything about until that they are literally dying.
So pregnant women are being turned away from emergency rooms across the country because the liability is just too great. Federal documents revealed that since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, there has been a spike in reports that pregnant women cannot access emergency care, particularly in states with restrictive abortive laws like Texas, Florida, and North Carolina. So keep in mind, this is illegal. According to the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or the EMTALA, if the facility accepting Medicare funding patients are supposed to be there, if it is accepting Medicare funding, patients are supposed to be screened, stabilized, treated, or transferred out of the facility. Either way, you're supposed to be seen if you show up in an ER. So Sarah Rosenbaum, a health law and policy professor at George Washington University, said this. Pregnant patients have become radioactive to emergency departments. They are so scared of a pregnant patient that the emergency medicine staff won't even look. They just want these people gone. These people, of course, is referring to pregnant people. A Freedom of Information Act request was filed in February of last year seeking pregnancy-related EMTALA complaints from the previous year. The federal government only agreed to release just some of those complaints across just 19 states, with names of the involved parties redacted. From the limited information that was released, federal investigators were found to have investigated about a dozen cases in the months prior to the Supreme Court decision and about 24 cases after the decision. So again, this is information from 2022. We don't have access to the data from 2023. So here are some gruesome highlights. This comes from reporting from the Associated Press. In Falls Community Hospital in Marlin, Texas, documents show that staff told investigators, the physician came to the triage desk and told the patient that we did not have obstetric services or capabilities. The nursing staff informed the physician that we could test her for the presence of amniotic fluid. However, the physician adamantly recommended the patient drive to a Waco hospital. So he wanted her to drive herself. She's supposed to be transferred. At the Sacred Heart Emergency Center in Houston, a woman had a miscarriage in the bathroom of an ER lobby. Her husband called 911 from the lobby, and then when the first responders showed up, the ER staff was unable to give them any information on the woman. And in Roxborough, North Carolina, at Person Memorial Hospital, a pregnant woman suffered from stomach pain and she needed an ultrasound. They wouldn't give it to her, so she tried to go to another hospital 45 minutes away. She ended up giving birth in the car and the baby did not survive. And finally, last one, in Melbourne, Florida, a security guard prevented a pregnant woman from entering the triage area because she had a child with her. She returned the next day without the child, but they couldn't find the fetus's heartbeat. So there's more to the story, but what sticks out to me in all of this is that none of these women were trying to obtain abortions. These aren't the baby killers that Republicans keep talking about. Maz, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I really hope that this bites them in the butt, the Republicans, and I hope that women that are hearing these stories and are reading these stories realize that there's an assault on women's rights. I mean, the fact that they took the right of a woman to choose away. When you had the right, it didn't mean you had to have an abortion. You could choose not to have an abortion. But now you have complicated things, made things such that we end up with stories like this where medical facilities are scared to even get involved with these situations that you just pointed out. And I keep referring back to my experience seeing what happened in Iran when the Islamic Republic took over. And I'm telling you, this is becoming the Christian Republic of America if you allow it to happen. If you sit on your butts and you don't vote and you sit there and you go, oh, you know, Biden's too old or he's too that or whatever it is. Don't look at just Biden or Hillary or whoever the reason is that you sat out. Look at what happens when you do sit out. You end up with 3 Supreme Court justices that were that took years and years, but they got them in and they took your rights away to choose, and here we are. And it's interesting because as a comedian, I tour the country a lot, and I end up in some places where I go, wow, what a great city, what a great experience I had here. And then when I look at what's going on in that state, I go, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I live in California where women still have the right to choose, and a lot of these things are not happening the way we see them happening in some of these other states.
So I remember when we still had Roe v. Wade. I'm old enough to remember that, and I would say to on air, you know, right wing, you guys crazy, you're gonna take away reproductive rights. Do you understand all the consequences that would flow from that? And it's obvious now, no, they had no idea of the consequences, because now that it's happened, they're all of a sudden pro-choice. So first of all, in this story, one of the consequences is, look, a huge part of medical costs is litigation costs. And they all need insurance, and the insurance is very expensive. And the more litigation there is, the more expensive the insurance is, which makes sense. You understand that concept. So then that makes people want to avoid certain types of things, right? Because, oh my God, the insurance on that is crazy, right? So now there's so many different factors here, including what if they make a mistake and now the fetus or the zygote in some cases is considered a live human being? Well, then you're not only might be in a lot of legal trouble, but that's gonna cost a lot more. Because then that person's gonna say, well, I mean, now we're not talking about a surgery that went wrong or an operation that went wrong. Now we're talking about you killed my child, even though it was 3 weeks old and you couldn't even see it, et cetera. You were trying to save my life or whatever it might be. So then they get preemptively worried. That's why they're not seeing people, because they're worried to death about all the costs that are associated with it, both legal and financial. So you can say, oh, they shouldn't be worried about that. They're doctors, they're just supposed to do their job. But brothers, you're the ones trying to arrest them. So of course they're worried, because you're saying, I might put you away for years for doing your job. So did you think the doctors wouldn't be concerned? And guys, does this look like pro-life to you? Turning away pregnant women who desperately need help with their pregnancy so that they can keep going and have a baby. And now you've made that harder, not easier. This is not at all pro-life. And now it leads to the comical situation that Maz was kind of alluding to there, where Carrie Lake does a video in Arizona the other day where she's like, now I have made the choice that life is precious to me and begins at conception, and that is how I've acted my whole life. But I understand that different people make other choices. That's not a pro-life position. That's literally the definition of the pro-choice position. So here we are, and that's why the pro-choice position wins with 70% support, and even in the reddest states. And that's why the Republicans are running in a panic from this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So many pro-choice women would never choose to have an abortion unless they absolutely had to, unless that was their only option to do so. And Cenk, you're absolutely right. The doctors, it's hard you can't really blame them, because they also are in a really tricky position. Doctors and medical facilities are worried about what could happen to them if they so much as look at a pregnant patient. So as it stands now, ERs can be fined for turning a patient away, which is much, much more palatable as a consequence than losing your medical license, for example, or having your facility shut down because you lose your Medicare funding for violating EMT-ALA. So in places like Idaho and Texas, for example, it's a showdown between the state and federal law.
Guidance under the emergency medical access law that says that if you receive Medicare funds as a hospital, then you have to provide emergency care when it's presented to you, no matter the circumstance and no matter if it would violate a state's abortion ban law.
Yeah, so later this month, the Supreme Court will hear arguments from the state of Idaho, which claims that EMTALA violates the state's restrictive abortion ban. So I believe that happens next week, actually. Cenk, what do you think? Is this just another states' rights issue?
Yeah, look, guys, my opinion on this legally is complicated because I think Roe v. Wade was terrific legislation, but the court's not really supposed to write legislation. And what is happening now, as messy as it is democracy. And so, and Maz's right, that's why I would never live in a red state now. So I'm not gonna risk my wife, my kids, et cetera, when they grow up, having to deal with the American Taliban. And the minute my daughter turns 18, what they now can kidnap her body at any time if she gets pregnant, and the government then owns her body for 9 months, and she doesn't have any freedom over it. And then these ayatollahs in Idaho or wherever they are going to tell her what to do with her entire life. Hell no, hell no. So look, when you have a conflict between the federal government and the state government, federal government wins. But when they pass laws that are just specific to their own state, yeah, they do have a right to do that now that Roe is gone. But hey, let's keep voting and see how it turns out. And so if you care about freedom and your reproductive rights, you should vote them all out, including in Idaho. Even their pro-choice position is gonna win. It won in Montana, it won in Kentucky, it wins everywhere, right? But then those Republican voters, the previous Republican voters who hate what's happening now, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but you got to change your vote. Otherwise, you're going to live under the Christian Taliban, and they can, snatch away your rights, your body, anytime they want. And even if you didn't, Yasmin earlier mentioned how they call people who have abortion baby killers. I think it is, in my mind, there's nothing wrong with abortion. I don't care at all. Everybody has a different view, different morality, etc. But you're playing with your rights and your freedom if you move to one of these states. And if you say, well, I like the tax cuts and I like and I've been told that I'm supposed to hate Biden or whatever, and so I'm gonna vote for the Republicans, okay, then you made your bed. And so don't come crying to us if later, look, we're gonna fight for you anyway because we're libs, right? But still, don't be like, oh my God, well, I didn't think they were gonna do it to me. Look, they're not even, those folks are pregnant. They're not even trying to get an abortion, and it's happening to them. So don't pretend that you didn't vote in favor of that when you do.
Yeah, it's like they're living in the year 5. Like they don't like progress. They're like, let's go back. I mean, we saw what happened in Arizona. They're going through that law from the 1800s. We saw what happened. I think it was Alabama where IVF was restricted. I mean, if you really don't think they're going to come after you, they will. And I'm telling you, we even saw in the decision in Roe versus Wade, Clarence Thomas said we're going after gay marriage next. And then again, religious minorities would be after that. If you're someone who is a person of color who is supporting the right, they'll come after you. Because ultimately, like Cenk was saying, you got to think about, it's interesting how you see Carrie Lake trying to distance herself. Even Donald Trump said, oh, it's states' rights. And just a couple weeks before, he was saying, I'm the one who got rid of Roe v. Wade. So they've seen the storm that's coming and they're trying to distance themselves from it. But again, you, the individual who's watching here, who's voting for the Republicans, just realize that if you're sitting there going like, I want fewer taxes, I'm afraid of immigrants, which by the way are not the people to be afraid of. The biggest threat to Americans are Americans. But if all of these tricks are working for you, just know that in the end, they're coming after your rights. They will take away your rights, and you will end up in a state where you don't have the ability to choose what to do with your own body.
Yeah, I'm gonna say one last quick thing. Guys, all elections are different and they have different issues that matter more. So like if you're voting on a local election and you say, well, I'm tired of the crime around here and I think the Republicans are gonna do a better job, I'm not gonna hate you for it, okay? I get it, I understand it, etc. If you do it at the national level and you do it with Trump, that's a totally different situation, right? But now at the state level, if you vote for a Republican, you're voting to have your rights taken away. There's no question about it. Almost all the Republican legislators in the country are against choice and against reproductive rights and the rights of women. That's just a fact. So if you vote for them, understand you're voting against freedom, You're voting against your own rights, and you're voting for this Taliban-like state where every pregnant woman is terrorized. That's just a fact. All right, we gotta go. Sorry, we'll be right back. We've got so many more important stories for you when we return. All right, let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Crystal writes, and the abortion laws also come from a fundamental lack of understanding of biology. These male lawmakers have no idea how a woman's body works, and the females supporting these laws are shrills. Look, I don't know about if they're shrills or not. I do know that I've seen this happen a million times where they vote in one direction, then it happens to them. They're like, I didn't know it was gonna happen to me. I thought it was just gonna happen to other people who I didn't care about at all. Okay, well, that's a little bit of just desserts. And yes, you're right. Like the idea that male Republicans are trying to figure out women's bodies because they really care. They don't care. They want to take away your rights to begin with. That's the whole point of it. Kina says, John's impression as he reads Trump's True Social posts gets me every time. Then dual Trump impressions from the panel. I'm dead. Okay, sorry for having killed you, but appreciate the compliment. Konstantin Kaviris writes, in following politics, it seems crazy that a jury of people without opinions could be found until you consider that if 2016 had not voting as a third party candidate and not voting would have won. So look, I hear you that the majority of Americans don't vote, and that's usually because they're disgusted by the options. There's a couple other reasons too. So you're not wrong that there's a lot of people who don't care for Trump or Biden, and yeah, they could be impartial on a jury. Gabby Mathis says, Cenk, maybe you can teach John how to pronounce my last name. Is of French-German descent. Love to you all. Too bad, I'll have to chase him down and tell him. You know, I got to educate the kid on a lot of things. The name's Bogdo says, YouTube keeps censoring us on your channel. We're just speaking respectfully, but the comments are criticizing Israel and US. Surprised. Look, I've never heard that, but that one comment got through. I think TikTok, if you use the wrong hashtag, shadow bans anything about Israel because they got criticism like, oh, you guys are supporting Palestinians, and then I think they panic. But I don't know, that's just my experience. I haven't seen it on YouTube. It might have to do with cursing or something along those lines, I'm not sure. So, okay, I'm about to run out of time. Don Quixote, thank you for gifting 10 subs on Twitch. Skittlebutt Dragon Raps writing, Graham and Bolton can feel free to go to the front line if there's a war, totally right. We're about to get to this story. Who's Your Daddy 89 says, odor in court, odor in court. I might steal that joke from you. It's about Trump and apparently him passing gas. We're all children, but that's right, we're having fun. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yasmin, and Maz with you guys. Yasmin's got the next story.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
I think it's going to be very difficult for Donald to sit through 8 weeks of these proceedings. Sometimes they're not exciting. Sometimes they're procedural and very boring. And as you've heard, he sometimes falls asleep during these sessions.
Former Donald Trump aide Omarosa Manigault Newman revealed yesterday that she and her fellow staffers had to come up with all kinds of techniques to keep the former president from getting distracted or falling asleep during meetings. Apparently, nobody on his team in the New York courtroom knew any of those techniques because earlier this week, Maggie Haberman at the New York Times reported this. Former President Donald J. Trump seemed alternately irritated and exhausted Monday morning as his lawyers and prosecutors hashed out pretrial motions before jury selection in his criminal case. So even as the judge was hearing arguments on last-minute issues, let's see, go to the graphic. Trump appeared to nod off a few times, his mouth going slack and his head drooping onto his chest. The former president's lead lawyer, Todd Blanche, passed him notes for several minutes before Mr. Trump appeared to jolt awake and notice them. So he did not like that reporting, and apparently he wanted to let Maggie Haberman, his old nemesis, know.
At one point, the pool said that he was glaring at you for several seconds. You had reported shortly before that during a break that he appeared to be falling asleep at one point as the proceedings were getting kind of tedious. Did you notice that?
I mean, yes, I noticed it. He made a pretty specific stare at me and walked out of the room.
I've been on the receiving end of said glares.
I know you have. I have too. I reported earlier that he had appeared to fall asleep. Now, we had seen him, and I want to be clear that I've seen lots of people fall asleep in courtrooms. I've seen jurors fall asleep. I've seen judges fall asleep. If anyone falls asleep who's a criminal defendant in a case, we're going to report on it. But he doesn't like when such things are reported, and I'm guessing, I don't know, that that's what this was about.
So Haberman reported today that once again, Trump appeared to doze off during selection of the alternate jurors. But let's go back to Omarosa because she's my favorite. She explained just how hard it is to keep Trump awake and focused during important meetings and ceremonies.
I will tell you that I've had to sit through long ceremonies with Donald Trump. I've had to sit next to him during long church services or different policy events. And Donald Trump cannot focus, nor can he sit still for very long. In fact, we used to build our events specifically to address his attention deficit. We would break up the event so that he could be stimulated and not fall asleep. We would slide him different information or news articles that he could read while these long proceedings were going on. Anything to keep him focused so that he wouldn't just get up and walk out.
Yeah, she almost makes it sound like it would have just been easier to give him a coloring book or something like that. What do you make of this, Cenk?
Yeah, so look, I think this is one of the sillier stories, and I'm happy to have Maz make some jokes about it, but really, the only part of this story to me that's relevant is when he's in the White House and you can't get him to focus on a policy issue or most importantly, a national security issue. And what Omarosa is not the best judge of anything, and she's a Johnny, if you don't know her, she's a bit of a snake, and she was a very diehard Trump person, and then they had a falling out. She's not like known for her veracity, let's put it that way. But having said that, she's not the only one who said that about the White House. They used to, they put the presidential daily briefing down to a page because Trump wouldn't read past the page. I'm not sure he can read past the page. They would put his name in there and pictures. And remember, it's just one page. How much content could there be if you stuff it with pictures and his name? So that part is relevant. Him falling asleep in court. Look, I was a lawyer briefly, but I slept through about 70% of it. So I don't blame him on that. Now people are making fun because they're claiming he's farting in court. Even one of our members said, odor in court, odor in court. Okay, it's funny, but not pertinent. Maz, thoughts?
Well, yeah, it certainly makes it fun. It's a lot of Schadenfreude. Is that how you pronounce that word?
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
It's been. If you took that to the fart, okay.
No, okay, Schadenfart. It's very Schadenfart. Okay. No, it's been. I mean, all the stuff online. Like I think Jimmy Kimmel called him Dozo the clown. I loved Don Snorleone that was trending online.
Oh,
which
that's
was great.
good. That's
Don
good.
Snorleone. It's fun to watch. I personally think that they're missing an opportunity for a cross promotion with the pillow guy, because he should have right going to court. Call the pillow guy, right? I mean, you know how every time he's giving a speech, the little pillow guy thing or like a coin thing comes up. He's selling you, anytime there's talk, he's saying anything serious on any of those OAN channels or whatever, he's selling you stuff. The pillow guy should take advantage of this. But more importantly, back to your point, Cenk, you're absolutely right. I mean, you come to realize that he really is as inept as a president as we thought he was. I mean, he really was not someone who is somebody who was qualified to be the president. And I think the Republicans that were part of his team didn't really care, because they said, oh, we have someone who'll do what we need him to do if we just boost his ego, we call him Mr. President. You saw the whole Mike Pence when they were going around the table and Mike Pence was saying, oh, it's such an honor and a pleasure to work with you. It was all a lot of that kind of stuff to get him to do what he ended up doing, which was to take women's rights away, which to put immigrants in the people, the kids in cages, and he's kind of like an evil Forrest Gump. Like he was, you know what I'm saying? Like he was dumb enough that they got him in there and they just propped him up. And we all know there was probably never a moment where he had an idea where everyone goes, oh, that's a good idea. You know what I'm saying? I can't imagine anyone saying, I mean, listen, he did so much crazy stuff. We keep going back to the, put bleach in your veins, blow up what was it? He wanted to blow up the storm. Oh, he's got all these crazy half-baked ideas. And in his mind, he's smart because like he had an uncle that was an MIT professor. I mean, that's how goofy this guy is. So it all makes sense, and it's great to watch him in his actual element and not on his Adderall or whatever he was taking to tweet aggressively, to actually see that he's a 78-year-old, 77-year-old man, whatever. He's an old dude. And so all these people that go, Sleepy Joe this, Sleepy Joe that, I go, this guy's no spring chicken, man. And to see it actually in front of you is fantastic. And I do hope that some of these people that haven't drank the Kool-Aid completely are waking up, pun intended, to the fact that this guy is not qualified to be the next president.
You know, we laugh because it's easier than crying. So that's what this story is. That could be our next president, who knows? But let's jump into this next story.
So they're saying there is a 17-year-old girl who you had a relationship with. Is that true? And who is this girl? What are they talking about in the New York Times?
The person doesn't exist. I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false. The allegation, as I read it in the New York Times, is that I've traveled with some 17-year-old in some relationship. That is false, and records will bear that out to be false.
So a new sworn statement at least places Florida Republican Matt Gaetz at a party with the then 17-year-old minor that he claimed in 2021 never existed. The House Ethics Committee is currently investigating whether or not Representative Matt Gaetz used any illicit drugs at parties after becoming a member of Congress in 2017. This is, of course, adding to the list of allegations already probed by the panel. So ABC News reports, according to a sworn written statement that has been obtained by the Ethics Committee, a woman says that in summer of 2017, when she was 20 years old, she attended a party in Florida that Gaetz also attended, which featured alcohol and drugs, including cocaine and MDMA. Sources familiar with the committee's work told ABC News. So according to the woman, in addition to Gaetz, the 17-year-old who was at the center of Gaetz's years-long Justice Department investigation was also in attendance. According to the statement provided to the committee, sources said the woman who made the statement said she saw the then minor naked at the party, which was also attended by adult men other than Gaetz, and that at the party there allegedly were bedrooms that were made available for sexual activities. So an important note here, the woman's statement did not address Gaetz's conduct at the party or his interactions with the then underage girl. So there's more. Though the statement obtained by Congress references Gaetz, it was not written specifically to the Ethics Committee, and is not primarily about the congressman. And the woman does not discuss whether or not she had knowledge of Gaetz's alleged sexual relations with the then minor, sources said. Gaetz and his spokesperson have both denied his attendance at the 2017 party. His spokesperson also denied Gaetz's participation in any illicit drugs since becoming a member of Congress. Okay. But remember, Gaetz was subpoenaed as a witness by attorneys representing the former 17-year-old in a civil lawsuit brought forth by Gaetz's former friend, Chris Dorworth. The suit alleges defamation by her and others during the DOJ probe. Gaetz is not a party to the lawsuit. Gaetz's deposition is slated for June and could see the congressman asked under oath about allegations that he engaged in sexual activity with the woman when she was a minor. Now, I believe his deposition was originally scheduled for earlier this month, but it was pushed back to June. So he says he wasn't at this party, but sworn testimony says that he was. He also says he has never done any illicit drugs since becoming a member of Congress. What do you think about that, Mods?
Well, first of all, I can't see the guy without thinking of Beavis and Butthead. He's one of those two. I don't know which one he is. I forget which one's which, but he's very one of them. The guy. Beavis.
No, Butthead.
Butthead, isn't it?
So then, yeah. So he's Butthead, and that makes sense. But more importantly, I don't think it's illegal to do drugs. I mean, there used to be a time. Remember, there was a time when they were like, I did not inhale, and that was a big thing. Now, like, you could do drugs and it's fine. I mean, but then it depends, I guess, on what side you're on, because there was also Democratic Congress members who did, do drugs, and then their side wanted them out, like the Katie Hill incident. So this guy, we all know he's slimy, but more importantly, I hope that the truth comes out, and I hope that we find out if he actually did have some sort of sexual interactions with a 17-year-old. According to Kevin McCarthy, that's why he was ousted. We saw that Kevin McCarthy said the reason he was ousted was because Gaetz didn't want this investigation done. So he certainly seems like he's the guilty type. He's slimy to be the guilty type. But more importantly, I would ask the people from his district in Florida to ask themselves, what has he done for them? I mean, he's part of the most undistinguished and ineffective Congress that we've seen in years. And so that's the bigger question for the people that voted him in, to go, what has this guy done except throw bombs and just, put a stop to anything that's ever productive? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, so look, you all know that I disagree with Matt Gaetz on about 98% of issues. And the lies are kind of funny there, because on the air he says a 17-year-old didn't exist, and the records will show that I was never in a room with a 17-year-old, and the records now show that he's in the room with a naked 17-year-old. Not in the room together, like in a bedroom or anything like that. In general, at the party, just to be clear. So, and he says he's never done illicit drugs since he's in Congress. I don't believe him at all. Now, having said all of that, they're out to get him. And by the way, they could be out to get him and he could be guilty at the same time. Both of those things can be true. But right now, they have not presented any sufficient evidence on him being with a 17-year-old. That's a real problem, massive problem. Even if it's legal in Florida, it's still a giant problem, okay? But if you don't have him on that and you're coming to me with weak sauce about how he did some drugs at a party, I couldn't care less. And just real quick, I don't know if you guys, like the other thing that they keep throwing at him is he paid for sex. Honestly, I don't care about that either. That's his personal life. Couldn't care less. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that you're right on all those fronts. But again, he's an easy guy to hate, and so I am hoping for the evidence to show that he did actually do some illegal or very inappropriate stuff. And who knows? Listen, even if they kick him out, which I don't think is going to happen, he'll probably just get a job as a commentator, and some part of the right will see him as a hero. So it's amazing how things that we thought would bring people down 4 or 5 years ago are no longer the case. They actually become heroes in the eyes of a portion of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and rooting for him to be guilty and us telling you he's guilty when we don't know yet are two very different things, and we don't know yet. Yasmin, last word.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you asked, about the difference between his personal life and his professional life and what's illegal and what's legal. If he did something illegal, then yeah, I do want him to get caught for that. But I was a child in the 90s when Bill Clinton was going through his impeachment, and we all know what that was about. So I don't think I need to remind the audience. But I remember being, pretty young at the time and thinking, I don't care about this, And of course, at the time, the Republicans tried to make a big case about how, Monica Lewinsky might have seen, or overheard something that she shouldn't have seen or overheard. And I was like, I guess that's a problem, but otherwise, I don't care what he does with his, whatever. So it's a personal issue if that's what it is. But if it's illegal, then it's illegal.
Yeah, I said last word, but I just got to agree with you. I was a Republican when they were doing that to Bill Clinton. And I remember saying on air in the rinky-dink show that I had back then, wait, what are we doing? He had an affair. Why is that relevant to any of us? And if we think that's true for Bill Clinton, then you got to be principled and say the same thing is true for Matt Gaetz. If you got the goods on him, then go get him. But if you don't, a lot of this is, and Clinton was targeted, and you see people being actively targeted. Matt Gaetz, everyone in Washington hates him. He's obviously targeted. And so let's not fall for the things they want us to fall for just on accusations. And when someone's targeted, they always find something sexual. Keep it real, right? The question is, was it actually wrong and illegal? Or is it just titillation and we're just supposed to get rid of him because we don't like sex and drugs and that idea? That's puritanical nonsense and has nothing to do with policy. So I agree with Yasmin and Moss. All right, when we come back just for the members in the members only episode, we're gonna have a couple of interesting stories for you guys, including, does an happy wife actually mean happy life? Well, right winger says no. I don't know what he's gonna do with his unhappy wife. That's a different question. And was Joe Biden's uncle actually eaten by cannibals? Yes, this is a real story. tyt.com/team to join us. The link is always in the description box, or you could hit the join button below. We'll see you there.